Uhuru!
Uhuru!
Uhuru, everybody. Hasn't this been an amazing event so far? Let's give a round of applause. I just want to first of all salute both of the amazing presentations from Chairman Amalia Shatella and Chairwoman Penny Hess and ask for another round of applause for those incredible presentations. And I also want to join in saluting the leadership of the chairman and the party and Deputy Chair Onizanea Shatella and all of the leaders and members of the African People's Socialist Party who are here tonight. And before we talk about, we're going to talk about reparations, and I'm actually very excited because we're also going to engage in reparations. The people in this room, the white people who came to this, we're actually going to take part in reparations. So it's not a mysterious, abstract thing, like we're going to do it in this event tonight. Before we do that, I want to show a brief video. It's short, it's about 6 minutes, and then we're going to talk about how those of us who came here tonight can actually put into practice reparations in action. So please stick around. We're going to show this video, we're going to talk about reparations, and then we actually have a discussion section on the program tonight for you to ask your questions and make your comments for our speakers. So let's go ahead and watch the video.
You didn't have anything to do with it. I didn't have anything to do with it. Slavery is both our legacies. It's mine and it's yours. You inherited the wealth of slavery, and I inherited the poverty of slavery. I am determined to change this legacy that's been left up to me. If you don't change yours for yourself, I'm going to change yours too. So it's best for you to join me.
The struggle to make honest reparations to African people means we come to terms with the brutal truth of the world as it really is, as experienced by oppressed peoples of this world. Reparations acknowledges the millions of Africans who were ripped out of their land and civilization, who were chained body to body in the holds of ships, brought violently to labor for free on this land stolen from the indigenous people, so that you and I could enjoy a lifestyle we assume to be our birthright. Reparations acknowledges the millions of human beings severed from language and culture, from home and family, mother from child, to produce the wealth for us so that our families could rest on a foundation of seemingly unassailable security. Reparations acknowledges the fact that our grandparents held lynchings of African men and women whose tormented bodies hung from trees as the centerpiece of North American entertainment enjoyed by thousands of us. Reparations is not charity. Reparations lets white people acknowledge that yes, life on the tortured backs of humanity is intolerable, and that our existence as parasites sucking the blood of the peoples of the world is unendurable. Therefore, reparations to African people is in our interest. But in the culture of imperialism, the pursuit of mindless and obligatory happiness can only be purchased with drugs, alcohol, consumerism, conformity, and meaningless pleasure to mask the terrible despair and pain of colonial reality which ceaselessly rises to the surface of our beings. The struggle for white people's reparations to African people acknowledges the inevitable course of history in which those who have suffered and suffocated as the cornerstone of this corrupt system must turn the gun on U.S. imperialism, not to perpetrate violence, but to end it. And that if we are ever to stand in solidarity with African people and the peoples of the world in an honest way, we must carry the weight of our inherited past and present. The children of the slave masters facing the children of the enslaved. We recognize the fundamental reality that our long, violent, parasitic relationship with African people underlies the truth that Africans created the foundation on which our stolen house rests, and that any struggle against U.S. imperialism is necessarily bound to the leadership of African workers in the struggle for independence and socialism. Reparations recognizes that revolution is not waged on empty words or ideas of racism, but in the real seizure of political power, resources, and means of production as the basis of Black power to the African community. And that North American people can unite with our genuine interest in the destruction of this system by building a movement to destroy the resource and power base of U.S. imperialism from within our front, where those resources have been hoarded, reparations into the hands of the African revolutions. Reparations recognizes that only the African People's Socialist Party, the vanguard, the advanced detachment, can solve the problems left to the world by the death grip of parasitic capitalism in the struggle, no matter how difficult, to end the pain of half a millennium of terror through self-determination, self-government, and power, to make sure no vicious terrorist armed with weapons of mass destruction and hideous ideas in their heads can ever hurt any African person ever again. The leadership of the organized African working class will end the system of oppressors and the oppressed, turn the past into power, science into poetry for the people, African internationalism into the currency of the workers, restoring an earth without borders where all human beings can live, no one at the expense of others. The struggle for white people's reparations to African people allows us to become new communist human beings for whom the suffering of any child on this planet is as painful as the suffering of our own child, where our interests are one with the interest of colonized workers for whom there is no rest until African independence is achieved, U.S. imperialism is destroyed, and power is in the hands of the people. Build the movement for white people's reparations to African people. Uhuru.
And I just want to give another shout out to Chairwoman Penny Hess, who is narrating that and who wrote that and who has worked under the leadership of Chairman Amali Shatella since the founding of the African People's Solidarity Committee in 1976. Uhuru. And I also want to salute Naila Taylor for that performance, the poem earlier. That was brilliant, as always. So, like I said earlier, we are about to engage in reparations to African people, and I am Jesse Nevel. I'm the National Chair of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement under the leadership of the African People's Solidarity Committee, under the leadership of the party. And I wanted to just ask first, raise your hand if you are currently a member of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. Okay, so there's quite a few members and quite a few people who are not yet members. And our goal tonight is that everybody will leave here a member of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. So first I want to tell you more about what that is, what the Uhuru Solidarity Movement is. And the African People's Solidarity Committee, which we've been hearing about tonight, built the Uhuru Solidarity Movement as a mass organization to deepen its presence inside the white oppressor society, building a mass, widespread, popular white people's movement for reparations to African people under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party. The Uhuru Solidarity Movement was formed in pursuit of a positive objective, which is reparations to African people. But it was also formed in opposition to all of the false expressions of fake solidarity masking opportunism and complicity with the status quo. The Uhuru Solidarity Movement was formed in opposition to charity. We are not a charity organization. Not only are we not a charity organization, we're anti-charity. Because charity maintains power and resources in the hands of white people. Charity is brushing off some crumbs off the table to the starving Africans so they don't die for one more day. So charity doesn't alleviate any suffering except maybe ours, how guilty we feel. It makes us feel a little bit better for a while to send a penny a day to Rwanda. We're not that, and we're opposed to that. We are not white allies. And there's a lot of white allies swimming around St. Louis after Ferguson happened. We're not that. We're not white allies to people of color, quote unquote, who gather and have unlearning racism workshops where we talk about where we do accountability and we talk about how, we felt guilty because our uncle said something racist at Thanksgiving dinner and we didn't say anything, and how do we process the trauma of that? We're not that.
No.
We're not that. We're not white people who think we're African either. We are white people who are taking responsibility for our legacy and our past and present reality as parasites on the body of humanity, because our only future is in solidarity with African liberation. So this is not a side project, it's not a hobby, it's not a social club. Like the chairman said, this is a different kind of organization. This is the Revolutionary Party of the African working class in white face. This is black power in white face. It is, like the chairman said in his political report to the Congress, that was amazing, that just happened, that this is not like some side group supporting the African Revolution. This is the African Revolution going into white society. That's what the Uhuru Solidarity Movement represents. It is the arrival of the African Revolution into white hipster cafes, universities, yoga studios, drag queen and king shows. Literally, people here are here tonight because a drag king started talking about reparations to African people in front of them. Like, that is the strategy of the African People's Socialist Party, is to take up all the space and to go into the slave master's house and win the children of the slave master to participate in killing the slave master and destroying the system of slavery. And that's not, for white people, the arrival of black power inside the white society, it's not something we should fear. It is actually, like Chairwoman Penny has said, it's our salvation. It's our redemption as human beings. And Chairwoman Penny has talked about the suicide cult of whiteness. This is our escape route from the suicide cult of whiteness. Some people see how hard this movement works and how we all believe the same thing, and they're like, that's a cult. Actually, no. White people in white society is a cult. The Uhuru Solidarity Movement is your escape. If you want to make a jailbreak from the cult of white people, join the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. We have 3 principles of unity. We are under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party. Period. Non-negotiable. No debate on that question. We were created by the party. We organize in the white community for reparations to African people. And after Ferguson happened, Chairman O'Malley came here and started organizing on the ground and called for solidarity to come here. Chairwoman Penny Hess and myself and others were here, and I remember that Chairwoman Penny gave a flyer to a white woman who was with the RCP USA. You're lucky if you don't know what that is. And said, we are APSC, we organize in the white community for reparations. And she handed it back and said, I'm with the Revolutionary Communist Party. I organize all communities. Which means she goes into African and Mexican and tries to organize colonized people to a white agenda. Well, we go into the white community to organize white people to the black power agenda. That's what we do as the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. And we stand in solidarity with African people's right to lead their own struggle for self-determination and national liberation. And this past year, in the context of the rise of the African People's Socialist Party and the Black Power blueprint that we're sitting in right now, the Uhuru Solidarity Movement has grown tremendously in the context of the growth of the African People's Socialist Party. And we're seeing a revolutionary culture of white reparations to African people emerging in white communities throughout the United States and even in other places as well. The reparations culture is a culture of life, hope, and struggle versus the white suicidal culture of death, despair, and hopelessness. Like the chairman just said, reparations is for us. Reparations is the answer for us. Reparations is our fight back against the white ruling class that we also hate, and our refusal to continue functioning as the cannon fodder or the lynch mob for that ruling class like we have for the last 600 years. And also, like the chairman said, for any sector of the white population, that experiences any pain or oppression in this society, whether as white women, white workers, white disabled people, white LGBTQ people, that reparations to African people is the lethal weapon against the social system that is responsible for that oppression too.
Yes.
So it's not just about trying to make it better for ourselves, it's about overturning the whole disgusting, foul, rotten social system from the bottom up. That's what reparations to African people is about. And reparations is how a white LGBTQ person who the US Army, a rapist army of killers, wants to recruit you into its ranks. Now it flies the rainbow flag, so suddenly that's progressive and hallelujah. You know, gay people can join the military. Well, the Uhuru Solidarity Movement is how you can say, fuck you to the US military. I'm sorry, there are children who are here. And say, we refuse to join a rapist army of imperialism just because they fly a rainbow flag. That we will not be the shock troops for white power any longer, and that the American flag, the rainbow flag, you can keep them all. The flag, the only flag we pledge allegiance to is the red, black, and green.
Yes.
And for anyone, you know, white society is rape society. It's a rape, like you're not gonna overturn rape culture without overturning imperialism and white culture itself, because it's built on rape. It's not just something like the chairman has talked about, all of a sudden we've discovered that white men are rapists, and the Me Too movement rises up when, you know, white men with the unity of white women have been raping African women and African men for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
And children.
Yeah.
Like, that's what this entire society is based on. I know Brett Kavanaugh, wow, he's terrible, and Trump said he wanted to grab women by the genitals, but Thomas Jefferson raped a 13-year-old African girl named Sally Hemings.
Yeah.
So like the chairman just said, this is America. This is white power. And we have to hate the whole thing. We can't be selective in our outrage at white power and imperialism. So I want to just finish up by saying, I was doing laundry the other day, and I was at the laundromat, and the History Channel was on, and it was talking about Nostradamus, and how he was this prophet, and you know, he had all these prophecies about the end of the world, and the end of times. And you know, a lot of white people, like I remember Y2K when that happened, everyone was freaking out about the end of the world is coming, and Armageddon, and all this kind of stuff. And the chairman's the only one. The chairman's better than Nostradamus, by the way, for Dickens. The chairman's the one who said, it is the end of times. The end is nigh for imperialism.
Yes.
We are in the end times for imperialism. That's why everywhere you look, you see social collapse, environmental collapse, economic collapse, because the system that's built on oppression is not going to survive when oppressed peoples are fighting back. And that's why in this doom and destruction atmosphere, a lot of white people, like Penny talked about, are giving up. You know, we're killing ourselves, we're doing drugs, we're drinking ourselves to death, we're committing suicide, and the chairman's talked about, like, you know, Hollywood represents the imagination of imperialism. So if you look at Hollywood, you're looking at the thoughts of imperialism. And what do you see? Like the chairman's talked about, you see vampires. You either see Superman, Iron Man, the strength of the past, or if you look towards the future, you see zombies and vampires. You see the undead.
Yeah.
So we can't see a future. That's the imagination of white people right now. We can't see a future. All we see is death, death, death. And then there's the African Revolution, which is fighting for life, which is fighting for hope for humanity. And when we say it's the end times for imperialism, I think the other thing we have to understand is that if the African, I'm not going to say if, because the African Revolution is going to happen. But let's say in some parallel universe it didn't happen, it would be the end times. It would be.
That's right.
It actually would be.
Yeah.
Because even the United Nations now, United Nations, not exactly a radical organization, is saying that at the rate climate change and environmental collapse is going, that life will not be able to sustain itself within, what was it, by 2040. 2040, that's not that far away. And they said, unless there is a major, unprecedented global economic transformation. Economic transformation. Spoiler, that's exactly the goal of this movement. Like, that's the whole point of this entire event, is making that happen. So, if you want life to even exist on this planet, And I'm being serious. Like, maybe a few years ago, I would have felt like kind of glib saying that, like there will not be, I'm dead serious. There will not be life on this planet unless the African Revolution is successful in destroying the killer of life, which is white power and imperialism. There won't be life on this planet. So this is a life or death situation for humanity itself. And that's what reparations is about. That's why reparations is in our interest. So instead of going down with the ship, we have to help bring it down. And that's what reparations to African people is about. It's already happening. It's already happening as we speak. And people who were part of making this event tonight know what I'm talking about. So I'm going to skip a few things because I know we're running out of time, but I just want to say that the Uhuru Solidarity Movement will this year surpass 1,000 members. So I want to salute every current member of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. That's going to be a major milestone because from that point on, it's just going to be an avalanche. It's not going to stop. We're going to have thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of white people standing in solidarity with African liberation for the first time in 600 years. Yeah. We raise a pledge to the party of material solidarity. That's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to raise money. Because, you know, sometimes you hear reparations and white people ask, like, well, are you talking about money? Like, what do you mean by reparations? Are you talking about money? Yes. I'm pretty sure that's what the Jews meant when, which is my people, when we got reparations from Germany, we got money. Like, that's always what it means. And we owe, white people, we owe a lot of money. We owe lots and lots of money. You can't even put a dollar sign on what we owe to African people. You can, actually, for aspects of it, and they have. They said $14.2 trillion owed for unpaid labor alone. That doesn't even include everything that's happened since then, which has been worse than what happened under chattel slavery. And that, by the way, is the GDP, the gross domestic product of the US economy. So like, well, how much are you talking? When you say reparations, like, how much do they want? The whole thing. The whole thing is drenched in blood. The whole thing has to go. The whole thing. And I love this quote from the chairman. He says, imperialism will not survive a successful struggle for reparations to African people. So reparations is just another word for revolution. Yes. Reparations is another word for that thing that's going to prevent the 2040 end of life on this planet. That's what reparations means. It's another word for revolution. So we're going to raise money. This year, our goal is $100,000. We're on the road to making that happen. This event tonight is part of that. Next year, we'll be increasing it to at least 150, but we want to raise millions of dollars and more in reparations to African people. So we're increasing our membership. We're building throughout the US. We're going to build in Australia this year. We're going to build in South Africa. We're going to build in Europe. We're going to build everywhere where white people have dispersed ourselves as colonial settlers. And that is what I want to say. So the last thing I want to say is that the beauty of this movement is that it will win. It's scientific. It's not mysticism. It doesn't involve prophecies or anything like that. It's a scientific, clear strategy. I can't find it. And the African People's Socialist Party, the vanguard of the African working class, is committed to ensuring that the next generation of African children will not inherit the legacy of the enslaved. And white people in the Solidarity Movement should be committed that the next generation of white children will not inherit the legacy of the slave master. Yes. They will inherit the legacy of white reparations to African people. Yes. So on that note, I would like to introduce you to our young comrade Rowan, who is 11. Yes. Is that correct? Okay. And invite you up to the stage, and Rowan is going to tell us why he stands in solidarity with African liberation.